everybody, how are you today? We're going to do some Muller Rusch, and this is the Muller Rusch dance. Alright, we are going to be on lesson 66. This is page 71, and today we're going to be focusing on number 338, A and B. So this is the key of A major, so an A major scale, and basically an arpeggio is what B is. It doesn't really say that, but that's what that is. In the key of A major, we've talked about A major before, but you have three notes you have to worry about. You have F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp. I'm going to go into each individual instrument stuff when I get to your instrument because it's going to be different depending on what you play. So after I do this and tell you the stuff that applies to all of you, you can skip ahead to your instruments stuff. The other thing that everybody needs to keep in mind is in a scale or an arpeggio, we don't do vibrato. Sometimes it's nice to have a scale and practice your vibrato, but there's also scales where you're trying to get a pitch and focus on getting that pitch in tune. So don't do a vibrato when you practice these scales. That's my recommendation for you. The other recommendation for all of you is to make sure you have a drone in the background. If you have the drone of the note A, that'll kind of help you to see if you're getting all of those different notes in tune, especially the third and the fifth notes of the scale. So I recommend practicing number 338 A and B with the drone A in the background. I'm going to be going 70 beats per minute on the metronome, which is slow, but the point of this is not to go quickly, it's to focus on your intonation. If you need a metronome, you can have a free one at home. Go to Google, type in online metronome in the search bar. You can then, it'll come up and there's a slidey bar and you adjust it to 70 and hit play. And you got a metronome going. I think that's it for the things that apply to everybody. I'm going to now go into each individual instrument. I hope this beginning part helped you. Hi violins! Alright, so we're on 338 A and B, A major scale and arpeggio. The biggest thing that you have to worry about is that you have a lot of high third fingers, and you also on your E string have a high second finger G sharp. However, that G sharp sounds really scary and everything on your E string, but that's just like playing an F sharp or a C sharp. It's just a high second finger. So you've actually been doing that for years. So this is not really that big of a deal. The bigger deal is actually the high third finger, and that's what kids usually tend to have out of tune, especially when they're going back down the scale. That's when it gets in tune. So you're gonna have to reach a little bit higher. A way to do that, if you're playing this, if you're going from, let's say, the A string to a high third finger on D, you might have to bring in your elbow just a tiny, tiny bit. I have to do that to extend my fingers because my fingers are actually not very long. Not all of us were genetically blessed. So make sure when you're doing this, you're able to extend, especially going onto your farthest string, your G. I really have to bring my over to get that C sharp in tune. I would say that is the most difficult part. At B, it does say you have an octave above also. I'll let you play either one. I just want it to be in tune, whatever you do. Make sure you're not doing vibrato. I think that is it for you all. Luckily, you don't have to skip octaves or anything like some of the other instruments do, so this will actually sound more like a scale for you guys, as opposed to some of these other instruments in our orchestra. So let's go ahead and start playing it for you. 1, 2, ready, play. So when you do number 338 A and B, you have to switch octaves a few times. The reason they're doing that is because if they were to continue, you would be shifting not only in first position, but you'd shift again and then you'd shift again. So they're like, let's not do that yet, but let's learn the notes of an A major scale. That's why they did that. So if you're like, this doesn't sound like a scale at all, because it is, but it's not, technically. When you do this, you have similar issues as the violins. You have a lot of high third fingers, and while you might not have to bend over quite as far because you're not playing on your C string for this all the time, you do probably need to bring in your elbow just a little bit to get some of those high third fingers. And really, that's the craziest thing that you probably have to do. If it were me in the B section for you all, I think that I would definitely do some of those fourth fingers that you have written. It actually makes it easier if you do that. So that's all the comments I have for you. I would definitely make sure you're watching your music when you play this because you are switching octaves. So just so you don't lose your spot. I hope this helps you. 1, 2, ready, play. Hi cellos, let's talk about your part. So in the key of A major, because you have so many different notes that are sharp, you actually have to stay in this extended hand position for the entire scale. Even when you're on your A string, and I would stay in that extended position so that when you go back to your D and G strings, you don't have to switch your hand back. You can actually just keep your hand in that position and it'll stay more in tune that way. I would say that the trickiest measure for you are measures such as measure 3, where you're going to want to do open for the half note, 1, 3, 4, but you can't. I mean, you can technically, but that means that you have to go back into a different hand position. So in the short term, it's going to seem easier, but in the long term, it's just going to be not good. Do not recommend 1 star on Yelp. So instead, cellos, what I would do in measure 3 is open, first finger B, and then do an extended finger, second finger, and then you can do a third finger high D, so your fourth finger won't go down. Remember, cellos, when you have an extended hand position, your second finger, it's first finger, second finger, and your thumb is opposite that second finger, third finger on the third tape, and that fourth finger is what's giving it an extension. So that's going to be for your G sharp and your C sharp on those, on your D and G strings. If you don't do that, that's not proper cello technique. So you have to do a hand extension. So essentially, if you took your hand away from the cello, your hand's kind of like this. It's like your first finger. Someone once told me, his name was Dr. Pope. He told me this. Like your hand, if you were to put your hand on your face, which I do not recommend right now, wash your hands. You would actually, it would chin, lips, right under your nose, and right between your eyes. Please don't touch your face. So those are my recommendations for you. This is something that you're probably going to have to practice a couple times to keep your hand in that extended position and make sure everything's getting in tune. I hope this helps you, cellos. 1, 2, ready. that difficult, and for most of it you do stay in first position. However, the tricky part to me is when you go from the fourth to the fifth measure. They do mark it in your part where you do need to go to half position. So if you're looking, you have a fourth finger F sharp on your D, but then you go to half position G sharp, and then second finger A, back to half position G sharp, but then you have to like jump back to first position fourth finger, which I think is kind of a big shift. It's funny. So just be careful of going from that first finger to that fourth finger F sharp. You might want to actually just isolate that one part of that scale a couple different times, because it could be awkward if you don't know where your fourth finger is supposed to be going. Just like the viola and cello, your octaves are all over the place in this one, and it's because they haven't quite taught you all the different shifts that are needed to play this particular scale. So they're trying to keep you mostly in first position to do that, just so you know. As far as the arpeggio goes, it is not difficult at all, and you can totally do that. If I can do it, you can do it. All right, let's go ahead and start the spaces. 1, 2, ready, play. I hope this lesson helped you guys. Please let me know if you have any questions, especially if it's about a fingering. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.